I recently put out a poll asking our community what they preferred out of the Nintendo Switch or the PlayStation Vita. The results were quite surprising, with Vita gaining 40% of the votes and holding its own against the Switch with 60 out of the 1,000 votes that were cast. And whilst our community isn't the biggest, I'd like to think that it is full of individuals like myself who are both passionate and invested in video games, which makes this result quite interesting. Let's take a look at the first comment coming in from Graham McNaught. Switch, a revolutionary home portable hybrid with a huge catalogue of indies and Nintendo masterpieces and lots more. Only downside is the Joy-Con drift problem. I love my Vita too, of course. I'll have to completely agree with Graham here. The Nintendo Switch truly is a revolutionary console that facilitates experiences that can be enjoyed no matter where you are. Having the ability to play on the big screen and then simply swap it out and take it on the go with you is a huge advantage. Whereas with the Vita, you are confined to the small screen unless you purchase a PlayStation TV, but still that does not offer the same easy to use functionality that the Switch does, and instead utilizes cloud saves. As Graham states, having access to the Nintendo Switch's exclusive library is a huge plus as well, with franchises like Mario, Pokemon and Zelda, which are literally one of a kind and provide hours upon hours of entertainment. Our next comment, I own both consoles but I rarely use my Switch. I find that the Switch doesn't have as many games that I want to play where the Vita does, and on top of that the Vita can play PS1 and PSP games. Obviously each machine's library of games will come down to personal preference, but in my opinion MVJ makes some really good points here, especially the ability to play both PS1 and PSP games on the Vita, which immensely increases the amount of titles available on the system. Sure, not every title is on the store, but a good amount of unforgettable games such as Peace Walker, Persona 3 and Resident Evil, to name a few, are all present and make for a compelling reason to choose a Vita over a Switch. As I mentioned, it will all come down to personal taste, as each machine has a huge selection of games, but having most of the PlayStation's back catalogue at your fingertips is a real plus for the PlayStation Vita. Let's take a look at a comment left by Aurora Paradox. I like them both, but I'd have to pick the Nintendo Switch if I had to make a choice. The Vita is smaller, has Bluetooth, and supposedly if you modify it, it is great for retro games. The Switch on the other hand has first-party Nintendo titles, no proprietary memory cards, can connect to a TV and has good support. I wonder if Sony had done things differently, the Vita would have been a success. Now Aurora makes some compelling arguments, mainly the fact that the Switch continues to receive incredible support that the Vita never really received. Of course, a ton of great games released for the Vita, but with Sony all but abandoning the system at this point, the Switch is the better option when it comes to enjoying the latest experiences that continue to come out. The system has become a one-stop place to enjoy a wide range of indie titles, as well as several games from the past, such as the Devil May Cry series and Dragon's Crown, to name a couple, that are made all the better by being able to take them on the go as well. As Aurora mentioned, maybe if Sony had handled the PlayStation Vita differently, they would have never have had to essentially pull the plug on the handheld and would be sharing the success that the Nintendo Switch now receives. Another comment from Team LDS, my reasons for picking Vita. Number 1, Vita has amazing games. Number 2, you can mod it. And number 3, it is good for emulation. As Team LDS states, one of the best things about the PlayStation Vita is that it can be modded, which opens up the system to a whole range of new functionality. I recently did a video about modding the Vita, so if you want to check that out, there will be a link in the description below. Now there are several reasons to mod the system, with emulation being the most valuable, as it allows you to enjoy a whole host of games from various consoles of the past, such as Super Nintendo, Game Boy Advance and Neo Geo, to name a few. But it's not only that, a huge selection of tweaks and customization options are also present, which immensely adds to the overall experience of the Vita, such as using external controllers, turning it into a Steam Link machine, and a ton of homebrew games and apps that make a modded Vita a really compelling option. Of course, not everyone will feel comfortable with hacking their console, and for those the Switch would probably be the better option due to its higher amount of games and continued support. Our next comment comes in from Andrew Lodge, who simply states PS4 Remote Play. Now one of the biggest and most compelling features of the Vita has to be Remote Play, that allows players to stream their PlayStation 4 games to the handheld, having the ability to play some of Sony's flagship titles on the go, and helps propel the Vita into a formidable contender. If I'm being honest though, it all does depend on the speed and quality of your connection, and if it's not up to the task, it can result in some rather negative outcomes that render the feature useless. But if you are lucky enough enough to have solid speeds, the remote play is a great reason to choose a Vita over a Switch if you own a PlayStation 4 as well. Moving on to another comment which was left by Regan Dow. It will take a real crazy system to beat the Vita in my eyes. I have both the Switch and Vita along with hundreds of physical titles for both devices, but I always go back to my Vita whenever possible. It's just that perfect size and feel, having one model with a stunning OLED screen and a redesign that's even slimmer, and although the screen isn't quite as stunning, it's very close, but the device is just awesome to hold and play on. Now Regan mentions the OLED screen of the Vita, which is an absolute amazing feature of the original handheld. When turning on the machine, you are greeted with an incredibly vibrant and immersive screen that is far superior to what the Switch offers. The build quality and overall design of the machine just feels a lot more robust and well thought out when compared to the Switch. Even in 2020, the Vita still looks incredible and fits right in with many of the devices we use daily, such as phones and tablets, and although the Switch is not badly designed, it does feel slightly out of place when compared to the Vita. Although the Switch Lite model does alleviate some of the design issues with the original, it still never reaches the quality of the Vita. Let's move on to our next comment by Jamie Jacob. Switch has a better diversity of games. MicroSD is more convenient than Vita memory cards for storing content, and the Switch's content is far better advertised. Now one of the biggest issues with the Vita has to be the insanely priced memory cards that in my opinion contributed to the lack of success that the handheld experienced. The Switch allows players to utilize a much more accessible and affordable form of memory known as microSD, and makes the overall process of acquiring more memory a lot less painful. For this reason alone, the Switch wins it for me, as having to pay astronomical prices just to avoid having to constantly delete and re-download your favorite games is just completely unacceptable. Sure, the Vita can use them as well, but it does require the user to mod the system, and not everyone will feel comfortable doing that. It's a real shame, as the Vita is such a beautifully designed and well constructed handheld, but it is just held back by one simple problem. Another comment coming in from Tech with Sean: Switch because it has Dragon Quest games. I myself am a huge Dragon Quest fan, so I'll have to agree with Sean here. Having the option to play a whole range of Dragon Quest games on the Switch is a real plus. Don't get me wrong, a version of Dragon Quest Builders is available on the Vita, but it's just not the same experience as the full-blown RPG titles that have become some of my favourites as of late. Of course, the functionality of the Switch plays into this in a huge way as well. Whilst at home you can grind away your levels on the big screen, but when it comes time to pop out and commute, it is so simple to just carry on exactly where you left off and continue playing. This aspect of the system really helps out with lengthy RPGs that can require a bit of a time investment. Here's a comment coming in from Ali: the ability to play MP3s during gameplay, a fanless system, better ergonomics and size, backwards compatibility with PSP and PS1, and zero design mistakes. Switch analogs and screen scratching dock, and the insistence not to accept and fix them is unacceptable. As Ali mentions, being able to play MP3s during gameplay was such a great feature of the Vita. Having the ability to load up a playlist of your favourite music to put on in the background is a real plus in my view. This feature would be so easy to implement in a future update for the Switch, so hopefully we see something down the line. Now the issue Ali has with the Switch is one that I can also share. The dock that the system uses has a tendency to damage the screen of the device, which is totally unacceptable. It would have been so easy for Nintendo to implement something to avoid the issue, and even though there are some modifications you can make to the dock to alleviate the problem yourself, as a consumer you shouldn't have to. It feels like a real oversight on Nintendo's part, and because of it I'm sure there are a lot of players like myself who exclusively use the system in handheld mode to avoid it altogether. Maybe this is something that could be changed in a future version of the system, because let's face it, when you pay nearly £300 on something, you don't want it to get damaged through no fault of your own. Our next comment was left by Ultimate Gaming, who stated, honestly I just preferred the Switch overall, and the Switch is newer, which means that there are a lot of new games coming out for it. I'd have to agree with Ultimate Gaming here. Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love the Vita, but I just find myself constantly going back to the Switch. Of course it will all come down to personal preferences, but the Switch clearly offers a much more beneficial experience when compared to the Vita. As I've mentioned earlier, the fact that new games continually release for the system, many from the past such as the Final Fantasy series, Dark Souls and Deadly Premonition, to new experiences as well, that continue to push the hardware and the concept of the console. When compared to an unmodded Vita, there is just no competition. Let's move on to our last comment, which comes in from OutDaft UK. The Vita was a powerful handheld that was was actually a handheld size and also had trophies. The Lite model has the same sticks that don't last long and can't be replaced easily. You can use the Switch as a home console, but the games for the most part look really old compared to the other consoles on the big screen. The first model of the Switch isn't really that portable unless you carry around a backpack to take it with you, and although Nintendo released the Switch Lite, that itself is still quite large when compared to the Vita, which honestly feels like the perfect handheld size and can easily slip into a pocket when you have to commute. But the most damning problem with the Switch is that of the Joy-Con drift issue that has plagued many systems following its release. Luckily, I've yet to experience it on my system, but to avoid the problem altogether wouldn't be fair to those that have. With Nintendo all but avoiding the issue and not offering a solution with the Switch Lite model either, it really is a huge negative that could have the potential to influence a purchase to those in the know. Overall, it's a really hard decision between the two handhelds. I myself would choose the Nintendo Switch mainly because of its continued support and selection of exclusive titles that you won't find anywhere else, as well as the ease of use and execution of its main concept. But this is only when comparing it to an unmodded Vita. I would gladly choose a modded Vita over the Switch due to the sheer amount of options the device offers, but as I've stated earlier, not everyone will feel comfortable with an altered system, and for those who are unwilling to walk that path, when it comes to both the base systems, the Switch is the clear winner. Well, that does it for today's video. Let me know which console you would choose and why in the comments below. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on future videos, and as always, thanks for watching.